Hello and welcome to the week ahead from the Financial Times in London. Here are some of the big stories we're keeping an eye on in the coming days. Apple could face the first drop in earnings for more than a decade. VW is set to reveal more about the cost of the emissions scandal. Further elections in Iran could change the country's balance of power. And the Bank of Japan meets under mounting pressure to ease policy. First to Apple. The iPhone maker's 13-year growth streak looks like it's coming to an end this week when it reports its quarterly earnings. It will be the first time that revenue growth has declined since 2003, when Apple's iconic iPod was just 2 years old. Wall Street's expecting around $52 billion in sales. That's down 10%, with 50 million iPhone units shipped. That's down 18% on a year earlier. San Francisco correspondent Tim Bradshaw says Apple has to look beyond the iPhone, sales of which still account for more than 2/3 of revenue.
The iPhone is the big problem because the smartphone market is slowing down and Apple just can't sell as many phones as it did in the previous year, which was an absolutely huge record year after the iPhone 6 came out. So Wall Street will be looking to see if there are other sources of growth that the company can find to compensate. It's already started talking much more about the services business, such as Apple App Store and iTunes, which is around 9% of revenue. But I think Wall Street will also be trying to find out if the Apple Watch or Apple TV or maybe even the forthcoming Apple Car can make up some of the slack that the iPhone has lost.
And the week's other big corporate story will be the much delayed results of troubled German carmaker Volkswagen, which has admitted putting emission-cheating devices in 11 million diesel vehicles worldwide. These should give an updated figure on the cost of the scandal to VW, which has so far set aside 6.7 billion euros, though some analysts think it will be closer to 40 billion euros. The results come after a US court accepted a proposal from VW to buy back nearly 500,000 US cars. But analysts say many questions remain.
Well, it was a long time coming. So the scandal broke late September of 2015. Here we are well into 2016 with no real resolution or word from Volkswagen on how to fix this issue. And there's still some unknowns, but at least we've got some sort of commitment in terms of funds Volkswagen is setting aside and some of the initiatives that they're doing to help restore confidence for the brand in the US market.
Now to Iran, where the balance of power could change after runoff parliamentary elections on Friday. These are taking place in the 69 seats where no candidate secured a clear majority in February's general election. Allies of centrist President Hassan Rouhani made big gains from the conservative Islamic establishment in that election, but neither faction has a majority. Tehran correspondent Najma Bozorgmer said hardliners could still block the president's reform agenda.
The results will be crucial for Mr. Rouhani, who is under skyrocketing pressure from hardliners in the outgoing parliament and other conservative bodies that his nuclear accord with the world powers has not borne any fruits yet. An absolute majority is almost impossible to achieve, but a more friendly legislative assembly can make the life of moderate forces easier and increase the chances of Mr. Rouhani's re-election next year.
And finally, the Bank of Japan will meet this week to decide on monetary policy. Confidence in its efforts to stimulate inflation has been under pressure for much of this year from a strengthening yen. Japan's currency has risen more than 10% against the dollar since January, denting exporters and making imports cheaper. A weak yen has so far been a central pillar in the country's economic recovery plan, and further action from the bank to reinforce this is widely expected at some point. But Tokyo Bureau Chief Robin Harding says Bank Governor Haruhiko Kuroda is never predictable.
So the Bank of Japan looks at the economic data. It strongly suggests they should ease monetary policy further. The yen has strengthened, inflation expectations have continued to come down, and the economy has been hit by a pretty bad earthquake in Kyushu. Those are all reasons to act. On the other hand, Governor Kuroda, who's the man who decides policy, is not predictable and doesn't often respond directly to the data. He's also got to worry about a G7 meeting coming up next week, so he's got a lot on his mind. The meeting, I think, is a toss-up.
Meanwhile, in the US, the Federal Reserve meets this Wednesday, but is unlikely to change policy. Instead, markets will be looking for any hints as to whether the rate rise expected at June's meeting will still go ahead. And that's what the week ahead looks like from the Financial Times in London. See you again next time.